Take 2. Action. Resubmitting my Klong with a new and refined video. Main goals for this attempt are refrain from ranting about unnecessary stuff, update all the info because the Klong changed since the last time we made a video on it, and make no mistakes. Introducing Muib Zarira. Keep in mind that this is the same Klong as Ut, just with a different name. Like from the last video I submitted. Anyways, also, Muib is, well, not a conlang, rather a cipher that turns whole sentences into one word. Ithquil, but extremely dumbed down, to the point that it is not even remotely similar to Ithquil. Let's get straight to the point. Here's the phonology. P, B, T, D, Y, K, G, L, M, N, R, R, F, V, S, Z, G, H, W, H, L. And the vowels are I, U, U, E, O, A. Note that R and R are interchangeable, like in the two other languages I speak, Ukrainian and Russian, though the trill is the standard phoneme. Yes, Muibzarira has a voiceless palatal approximant, but not a voiced one. And yes, it has U and but not A. Also, the phonemes Y, L, G, and H don't have voiceless counterparts, as this feature has been inherited from previous versions of the cipher. Also, Muibzarira has vowel clusters ranging from diphthongs to triphthongs, and perhaps even quadrophthongs. However you call 4 vowel clusters, I don't know. All 2 vowel clusters are represented by ligatures if there is a corresponding one in Unicode. If, say, a 3 vowel cluster occurs with a possible ligature between 2 vowels inside of it, that part of the cluster is converted into a ligature. For example, ai turns into this. The cluster IB turns into this. If the 2 first and 2 last vowels in a triphthong can both be a ligature, only the first 2 vowels turn into a ligature. Basically, ligatures are formed in vowel clusters from left to right. Keep in mind that if a consonant cluster occurs inside one syllable, the voicedness of the consonants affect the pronunciation of the cluster. If the cluster occurs in one syllable, it's pronounced as one consonant. Say the cluster BKGK, if we use the English names of the letters, is pronounced P because the last consonant is voiceless. Basically, you can just look at the final consonant of the cluster, which affects the first consonant and the pronunciation of the entire cluster. Since B is voiced and K is voiceless, B becomes voiceless P. If the modified consonant doesn't have a voiced or voiceless counterpart, it just stays pronounced as it is. Some notes about double and triple vowels and consonants. They are not read as long variants. Rather, double or triple vowels are pronounced with glides. So a double I is pronounced E, and a triple I is pronounced E. Double and triple consonants are pronounced as one phoneme according to the aforementioned consonant cluster pronunciation rule. That's about it for the phonology. Now let's move on to the grammar. Oh? Oh, yeah. The grammar is quite literally non-existent. So are the phonotactics. Stress is free. However, there are rules as to how to use this cipher. Here's how to convert a sentence into muibzarira. Let's take the sentence, my hovercraft is full of eels, as an example. Since the only punctuation is the exclamation mark at the end of the sentence, it will be one word. I will elaborate on that rule after this example. Here's our starting sentence. The first step is to turn all capitals into lowercase letters and convert apostrophes and hyphens into spaces for convenience. But this sentence doesn't have either of the 2 punctuations. Next, convert each character with the table you can see right now. This is our sentence now. Next, you must reverse the entire sentence. Got that? Okay. Next, you must swap each second word with the preceding one. If the last word doesn't have another one to swap with, it just stays there. Now you're going to have to pay attention. The next step is to quote unquote blend the words together. And it has rules as to how to do it. Let's start with the first word. You need to attach the first syllable of the next word, and then the rest of the next word is omitted. Determining syllable boundaries is simple. If there is a consonant between two nuclei, only the second syllable gets the consonant. If there are two consonants, they get equally divided. If the amount of consonants is an odd number, the second syllable gets more consonants, whilst the first syllable gets less. So if there's, say, three consonants, the preceding syllable gets one consonant, whilst the following syllable gets two. My bad. Say you got seven. The first syllable gets, well, seven just theoretical because it doesn't really happen in the cipher, but theoretically, if you have seven consonants, the first syllable gets three, whilst the next one gets four consonants. You're going to repeat this process from left to right until you are left with one word. In situations where the following word doesn't have any of the six vowels, yes, that can happen. It is just entirely attached to the previous word. Now that you have your word, you're almost done. You just need to convert all of the vowel clusters into ligatures only, and only if a corresponding ligature exists in Unicode for the Times New Roman font, and only that font. It is the go-to font for writing this cipher. Some ligatures don't have capital variants, so they're written lowercase at the beginnings of sentences. Unfortunately, this sentence does not have any vowel clusters that can be turned into ligatures. For the very last step, you're just gonna want to convert the first character into a capital and place the punctuation at the end of the sentence that was at the end of the original sentence, so an exclamation mark. And that's your final sentence, pronounced Vuzrizernal. Okay, that's how you cipher sentences. Next up, I will elaborate on so-called cipher delimitations, numbers, abbreviations, and ciphering other languages. About the cipher delimitations, which is a term I definitely did not coin while writing while writing the script for this video, means where spaces are placed in the final ciphered text. Basically, punctuation like periods, commas, slashes, etc. correspond to spaces in the final ciphered sentence. Take the text template uh, x1 period x2 x3. X1 would be one word, whilst x2 and x3 would be another, since there isn't anything separating those two. Note that apostrophes and hyphens don't count as punctuation. In the final sentence, only the last punctuation mark is written from the original sentence. Paragraph separators are also converted into spaces. Thus, separate paragraphs in English are written as one paragraph in mubzarira. For further elaboration, as an example, titles and body text are written separately in documents, books, etc. Next up, numbers. Numbers are also written in as their own words, separate from the other words. Digits are not used at all. To cipher numbers, the original number is converted into words and then is ciphered with the steps above, though there are some rules to numbers. For example, the number 1283 is converted into 1283. For numbers like 1,000 and million, like 1,000 or like 1,000 and 1,000,000, the one part is at the beginning is omitted, and only 1,000,000,000 is written. In fractional numbers, the cipher delimitation rule applies to the comma or period. That just depends on your region. Americans use the periods, Europeans use the comma, etc. So the number 2.4 I'm gonna use the period for convenience sake, because strangely enough, Americans only understand the period, while the Europeans have to understand both the comma and the period. That's just a joke. Anyway, so the number 2.4 is expressed as two words which are ciphered separately. Note that characters like the percent sign are expressed as separate words separately from the number, and are ciphered into the rest of the sentence if it's not the last character in a sentence. Two more things left. Abbreviations now. Abbreviations are simple. They're just decoded and then ciphered along with the rest of the sentence. So an abbreviation like URL is converted into Uniform Resource Locator and then put into the rest of the sentence, if it is in one. If the abbreviation is written with periods, they are omitted and also converted into full words and ciphered as usual. Let me quickly emphasize on personal names. They are also just encoded into the rest of the sentence. Again, if they are part of one. The video is coming to an end. Now I'll explain how to cipher other languages with Mib Zarira. Now, in the past, it used to be much more impractical, where you had to take the sentence and cipher it as normal with all special diacritics maintained, and if the sentence was in a different script, you had to transliterate it and then cipher it. The problem with the latter was that each language has lots of different transliteration systems, allowing for lots of different results. To assimilate everything and make it a tad bit more cursed, I decided to take a different approach. In this version of the cipher, you have to take the text in the other language and translate it through Google Translate into Igbo, then into Telugu, then into Maya Yucatec, and then back into English, after which you just cipher it as normal. Note that you must do each part when between punctuation marks separately with this. Yeah, and you can only use Google Translate. Other translators would result in a grammatically, quote unquote, grammatically incorrect sentence. But yeah. And yeah, that's about it for the explanation. Now we can move on to the translation. This time with the actual gloss, unlike in the last video I made on this. Okay, let me try doing this. Ga okha zha de vudherir vuiza luvog udvai rayev vuzov muet ma ime weumit raili gay. Good enough. That's it for Mube Zarira. I doubt it'll get a lot of votes, if any, especially because this isn't even a language in the most literal sense, rather a cipher, and I've already seen some other submissions wildly more likely to get more votes. Also, I had practically all of the summer to redo my submission, but for some reason I was too lazy and ended up starting it 3 days before the submission deadline. As of writing this script, there are 2 days left until the deadline. Thanks for watching, and I wish everyone participating luck.